Hi guys, welcome to another video here for VCE Economics. Today we're going to go through price elasticity of supply. If you haven't seen the video on price elasticity of demand, then I'd recommend you see that one first and then come back to this one. So the concepts of price elasticity of supply are very similar to price elasticity of demand, but this time, like a lot of the times in economics, we want to make sure we've got our supplier hat on, okay? So firmly with our supplier hat on, and we want to make sure that we're making decisions to maximize profit. So when we look at our definitions, what is a low price elasticity of supply? I want you to think back to that example of the rubber band again, and that applies here as well, except for it's the effect that is different compared to demand. So when we have a low price elasticity of supply, being inelastic, that just means when there's a change in price, then producers respond with a very small change in quantity supplied. As you guys know, suppliers will chase high prices. So whenever the price will fall, that's actually bad for suppliers, and so they will often look to reallocate their resources away from those particular markets where the price has fallen. But if there's a low price elasticity of supply, because of the nature of their particular market, they can't change or reduce the amount of their quantity supplied as much as they would like. Conversely, we've got with a high price elasticity of supply. This is determined to be an elastic price elasticity of supply. And here, suppliers are able to have a significant change to what they supply to the market whenever there's a given change in price. And again, their price signal is going to be profit, chasing high profits and wanting to allocate resources towards things of the highest profit. So very similar layout to the price elasticity of demand chart. So I'm not going to go into too much on how that all works. You can see here, similar to price elasticity of demand, the inelastic curve is steep, like the letter I, up and down. But obviously we've got the supply curve, so this time it's leaning to the right. Now here, when there is a fall in price, we would normally see suppliers look to reallocate their resources away from that particular market. But when there's a low price elasticity of supply, they don't have the ability to actually reduce the amount of output they have. And you can see here with a significant drop in the price, there's only a very small drop in the quantity supplied. And that's respective of an inelastic market. Conversely, for a high price elasticity market or an elastic market, you can see here the curve is characterized as being very, very flat. That should be P1, but we'll just press on. And when there's a change in price here, as you'll see, I'll just cycle through. So we're starting at that bottom price. When there's an increase in price here, now as we said before, when suppliers see an increase in price, they'll want to reallocate more resources to it. And in this particular example, with a very small increase in price, when the market is elastic, it can respond to a very significant change in quantity supplied, as you can see down the bottom there. The best way to learn elasticity, guys, is through examples. And so the two examples here I've thought of are the mining industry and cinema tickets. So these are the same charts as we had before. You'll see on the left-hand side for a low price elasticity of supply with a mining industry, there can be a very significant drop in, let's say, the global price for coal. But you'll see there, due to factors which we're going to talk about in a little bit, they can't really change their output. They're still going to be supplying the same amount of coal to the market, irrespective of what the price does. Whereas on the right-hand side, you can see here with your cinema market, that is actually highly responsive to changes in price. And you'll see if there is a slight increase in the price of cinema tickets, then cinema suppliers are able to supply a significantly larger quantity. And the reasons for that, we've got over the page here. And you'll see here, we've got three factors that determine the price elasticity of supply. And those are production period, spare capacity, and durability of goods. Now, just like with demand, you don't have to use all of these factors to justify what elasticity a particular market has. Just one will usually do. In this example, we've got two that fit both. So for mining, you can see here with production period, that essentially means how long it takes to make the thing. It's really long. So you've got to find a mine, you've got to dig out the hole, you've got to set up all your machinery, you've got a lot of stuff you need to do to produce coal. And so as a result, if the price falls for coal, they can't really switch it off. They've just got to kind of keep going and keep the output going because it's taken so long to set up. On the other hand, if prices were to rise, other suppliers who aren't currently supplying coal are going to find it really hard to just suddenly start supplying coal because it's going to take so long to set up all the machinery. We also have a thing called spare capacity, which capacity is a word, remember, which means how much something will can take or how full something can get. And usually with mining, because it's such an expensive thing to do, they're running those mines at full capacity, which means they can't ramp up production for when the prices rise and ramp down production for when prices fall because the thing's so big and expensive, they've just got to keep on going at maximum output. Comparing that to cinemas, where the production period is actually zero. Now, we're not saying here the market for the creating of the movies, we're doing here the market for cinemas. And for these guys, it doesn't take them any time to produce what they produce. They've just got to kind of plug it in and press play. So the production period is really small. So if they needed to capitalize on higher prices, then they could kind of easily do that. And then also when we say with spare capacity, unless you're seeing Avengers on opening night, there's very rarely do you go to the cinema and there's no spare tickets, there's no spare seats. So the spare capacity in the cinema market is pretty good. So there's usually some spare seats. And a good example I like to think of this as the cinema is if it's, let's say it's a really, really hot day or a really rainy day, that's going to increase the demand for cinema tickets, and the cinemas can usually increase the quantity supplied by just selling more tickets because they have the spare capacity to do that. They can capitalize on that high level of demand. You'll see down the bottom there, the other factor is durability of goods. That essentially means can the thing be stored? Because if you can store the thing that you're selling, then you can hold it back from the market when the prices are low and then release it to the market when the prices are high. That's not quite applicable for these two particular examples. All right, guys, so that's price elasticity of supply. I hope that clears up any questions that you have. If there are any other videos that are not on the channel that you'd like me to do, please let me know in class. Otherwise, happy learning.